We have seen the SCP Foundation go to the limits of the phrase cold, not cruel when it comes to the end of death scenario. But there's one article, at least one, that I think is just a little bit of light in the darkness in this canon. And I like this because it shows that not everything has to be a competition to be spookier, scarier, more awful than everything else. And it gives just a little bit of balance to the really overwhelming darkness of the end of death scenario. We're looking at SCP-4322. It's level 4 4322 classified, which I find interesting. And it has an object class of Thaumiel, which is, if you're not familiar, a somewhat esoteric class given to objects which are generally beneficial to the Foundation. Special containment procedures. 4322 is to remain continuously active, with daily 4-hour breaks in transmission. Interviews with affected D-Class are to be carried out quarterly to maintain quality of service. Personnel are encouraged to submit media for potential inclusion in broadcasts. 4322 is a radio transceiver, anomalously modified to transmit psionic waves instead of electromagnetic radiation. It receives input via a standard Psi-5 cable, and until its modification by Foundation researchers, generated output using its metal casing as an antenna. The object was recovered from POI 3984 in Szczecin, Poland, who had previously used the object to provide comfort for his mother. The psychic energy produced by 4322 matches the profile of type Delta anomalous radiation, which is characterized by its extremely low interference with matter and high propagation over great distances. As part of Project Somnium, Foundation researchers installed an antenna extension composed of a beryllium copper lead alloy. This increased the effective range of 4322 from approximately 4 meters to 2.1 times 10 to the 7th power meters, permitting its signals to be received anywhere on Earth. And fuzzy mental math on that, I may be a digit off, but that should be something like 21,000 kilometers. However, despite its high transmissibility, the signal is weak and difficult to detect. The only known receivers are Class II psychoreceptors or sentient minds lacking normal sensory input. Due to the psychic nature of the transmission, receiving individuals are capable of complete perception of the broadcast, regardless of prior sensory impairments or linguistic fluency. Research is presently underway to include support for tactile, gustatory, and olfactory sensations. So that would be touch, taste, and smell. Media selected for 4322 should be generally inoffensive and culturally varied. Examples of past transmissions have included Beethoven's Sixth Symphony in F major, hour-long recording of rain, paintings of wolves hunting, documentary about the history of calculus, My Neighbor Totoro, Tuvan throat singing, pictures of nature taken in New Zealand, Dark Was the Night by Blind Willie Johnson. Addendum 4322-1, Project Somnium. Following the object's initial recovery, it was kept in a safe class locker until it was requisitioned to study weak psychosignaling, which was hypothesized to permit field communication where standard radio equipment could not be used. While the project was ultimately abandoned, it was discovered that experimental alloy B1304 was effective at propagating 4322's waveforms. Senior researcher Chen proposed Project Somnium, which was denied by 0513 as an unacceptable risk to normalcy. The Ethics Committee subsequently voted to overturn the decision and approved allocation of resources for the project. Testing of 4322's ability to transmit sound, visuals, and abstract concepts was performed on a D-class by temporarily disabling their external sensory input. Over the course of 4 months, modifications were made to the object's transmitter to achieve global coverage. A trial run was undertaken for 6 months to discover any previously unknown side effects. After being deemed safe, 05-4 approved full deployment and reclassified 4322 as Thaumiel. Since its activation, it is estimated that the object has lessened the suffering of over 12 million disembodied brains. So this is nice. This is, like I said, a nice little light in the darkness of this whole really awful dark story. So if you watched through the videos earlier that I did on End of Death, or are familiar with it in general, you know that there had been cases, many cases of disembodied brains that were supposed to be receiving input and no longer did, and were essentially in total isolation, unable to die, but with no life whatsoever, and with severe and deteriorating brain damage. So in this case, what's happened is this radio, which was thought to be able to allow agents to communicate psychically without a normal radio, well, that project didn't work out. But following the End of Death, it was realized that it could be programmed to provide input to all of these millions of people who were basically disembodied brains with no other input. It does mention that even if the brain is damaged or has degraded sensory capabilities, because it's psionic, all of the people receiving it are able to fully comprehend it and not have any loss in any degradation of quality or anything like that. So that's really nice, and it's interesting here. The ethics committee is something that you kind of see in a bit of a power struggle in a lot of places, but they're also portrayed as being very, very strong. And in this case, the ethics committee being able to overturn an 05 level decision, that's very interesting. That's something I don't think we would have seen in the earlier series of the sites. And I like that, because we very easily could have seen a lot of articles that would have been this helpful, and in fact we've seen some within this canon that were outright denied because of an unacceptable risk. And in this case, the ethics committee voted to overturn that based on the fact that it could relieve the suffering of millions of people who were essentially in eternal torment. Now, I don't know if I were in that situation, if I would want to be forced to watch a documentary about the history of calculus. I don't know. Maybe after years of isolation and boredom, anything is better. I just feel like probably there's more interesting things to provide these people than a math documentary, but I don't know. That's just me. Anyways, like I've said a bunch of times before, I really enjoyed this End of Death canon, and I hope you've enjoyed watching as I go through some of these things. If you have any questions, anything you'd like to see me cover from the website or anything like that, as always, leave a comment, because I always look out for those and see what people are wanting to hear more of. Do consider subscribing to stay involved and notified of any new videos. And if you enjoyed this one as much as I did, I hope to see you for another one. Thank you.